Hello and welcome to Shift from Burley Wharfdale Methodist Church. In this series of 5 sessions, which brings to a close 2020, a year where the world came together by staying apart, we're taking a look at topics that appear to present opposites. Staying informed but keeping calm, staying alert but keeping relaxed, staying apart but keeping connected, staying covered but keeping your identity, staying home but keeping festive. So let's explore staying apart, keeping together. In this week's shift, we're looking at staying alert but keeping relaxed. What should we be doing and not doing? How can we protect ourselves? Keeping healthy both physically and spiritually. Let's hear what Janet and Mark have to say.
Hello and welcome to Shift. Now, today I'm at home with Mark. We're actually not keeping 2 meters apart because we're living in the same household, but we are going to be talking together about how we make sure we're doing all the right things without losing our sanity and staying alert to the virus, but keeping relaxed. So Mark, who is a doctor, has kindly agreed to answer some of my burning questions about this topic, and hopefully there'll be things that will be useful to you too. So let's make a start. Okay, Mark, what should I do if I think I might have COVID?
If you think you might have COVID, then you should arrange to get a test.
Okay, how do I do that?
The best way to do that is to look at 119 on your web browser or to dial 119 on your phone, and both of those will get you through to the government corona testing service. The symptoms of the coronavirus are a new persistent cough. That's not just an occasional, but a persistent coughing or 3 coughing fits a day. Or if you have a high temperature above 37.8, or if you have lost your sense of taste or smell.
Oh, okay.
That can often happen quite suddenly and is a very important sign.
All right. So what do I do whilst I'm waiting for the results then? I've shoved that thing up my nose and made me gag and all the rest of it, and now I've gone home and, can I just carry on as normal or what?
I'm afraid not. Even if you're feeling well, apart from the cough or whatever other symptoms you've got, you should stay in. You should isolate for 10 days from the start of your symptoms, unless you get a negative test and are feeling better, in which case you can return to normal for the government guidance for your area. And the people who are living with you in your house, they should be isolating for 14 days from the start of your symptoms. So that's longer for them than for you.
Oh, seems a bit unfair.
Well, they could be still incubating the virus for 14 days from the start of your symptoms. So it's best to be on the safe side. But they can, if they're feeling well and you get a negative test, they can come out of the isolation then.
Okay, great. That's useful. All right, so we're coming into winter, time of sort of coughs and colds and flu anyway. Can I tell the difference between a normal winter cold and COVID?
That can be very difficult. Sniffles and runny nose can happen in COVID. Sore throat can happen in COVID. If you get a sore throat and a runny nose, it's more than likely to be just an ordinary cough or cold. But if you get the symptoms of loss of sense of taste or smell, or a high temperature, or a persistent cough, all of which can happen with a cold, then you should get a test.
Just to be safe, yeah.
Just to be on the safe side. You don't want to be that one person who spreads it around just because you are sure it's not a COVID cough.
Okay. So if I was diagnosed with COVID, oh, sorry, this isn't a persistent cough, excuse me. How long might I have symptoms for following infection?
That's very difficult to say. All viral illnesses can be followed by long periods where people get very fatigued and unwell. We've all heard of chronic fatigue syndrome. And coronavirus, being another viral infection, can cause that as well. We don't yet know whether the so-called long COVID is more prevalent than with other viruses. But certainly, if you're worried, you can contact your GP and ask for advice on that. It may be difficult. We don't know how many of these symptoms are due to the stress and anxiety that are around at the moment during this global pandemic, which are making people feel anxious about things.
Sure.
And how many of the symptoms are related to having had a very nasty illness. And we don't know how long these symptoms are going to go on for. All that is research that's needing to be done because of the newness of the disease.
Yes, it's all new to us. So we do need to be patient with each other and with ourselves if we have it. You know, it could take longer than we'd like it to.
Absolutely. People often underestimate how long it takes them to get over an illness. But we've had to start telling people who've had chest infections recently that it will probably take them 6 months to get over that and get back to normal.
Yeah.
So that's a chest infection. If you go into hospital, treated with antibiotics, home after a few days, and you may still be feeling unwell for several months before you get back to normal. So illnesses often last longer than people would like them to.
So be patient.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about masks now. Why should I wear a mask and when should I wear one?
Right. The reason to wear a mask is to protect other people.
Okay.
There's surgical masks, which are what you often see with the bluey coloured paper with the loops that go around your ears or tie around the back of your head. And they're only really necessary for healthcare professionals.
Okay. So could I just use a scarf or?
You could use a scarf or a buff or a homemade fabric mask.
Yep.
And masks are primarily aimed at stopping people from spreading the disease when they haven't got symptoms. So it's to protect other people.
Yes.
And so you should wear one if you go into a shop or if you're inside with other people who aren't in your household, then you should be wearing a mask or face covering.
Yeah, right. So I've seen these plastic face visors, you know, they're not kind of over your face like that. Are they a good equivalent?
They're not really an equivalent. Plastic visors are often used by healthcare professionals as part of their personal protective equipment in addition to a mask.
Oh, in addition, right.
But on the whole, the visors protect the person from being coughed on or breathed on and protect them rather than protect other people. Okay. By channeling your breath downwards, they may actually be worse than not using a visor or a mask at all. And of course, children under the age of 12 are not obliged to wear a mask, but if they feel comfortable doing so, then there's no reason why they shouldn't.
Okay, brilliant. So we've talked about face, we've talked about, well, we actually haven't said, but this sort of 2 metre rule. What's that about then?
Well, if you are meeting other people, you should stay 2 metres away from them. That should stop you from your breath from going into their face and from them breathing it in.
Okay.
And so again, it's to protect other people and yourself from catching the virus from them when they haven't got symptoms.
And so you said that children don't need to wear a mask. Are there other groups of adults who maybe don't need to wear a mask?
Yes, some people who may have communication difficulties don't find wearing a mask difficult. So, for example, if you're talking to somebody who's deaf, they may find that very difficult, and you need to make allowances in that sort of situation. Also, people who have such conditions as autistic spectrum disorder and some mental health illnesses may not be comfortable wearing a mask. But for physical conditions, masks don't alter the amount of oxygen that you're breathing in, and there isn't really a physical reason to avoid wearing a mask for oxygen levels. Your oxygen levels will be absolutely fine when you're wearing a mask.
Great. Well, that's good to know, and it's just something we've got to get used to, I suppose. The third of those sort of things that we should be doing is washing our hands a lot, all the time. When do we need to wash our hands?
We should wash our hands when we come in. We should wash our hands when we've been in contact with other people, and we should be washing our hands for 20 seconds. The I Will Survive anthem when you're washing your hands is a reasonable timer, and you should use ordinary soap and water, or a hand rub, which is 80% alcohol.
Right.
It's not enough just to tip a bit of whiskey over your hands, although that would be a shameful waste anyway, because that's not got enough alcohol in it.
Right. I'm sure nobody's doing that. So, all right, we've kind of covered their COVID as well as we can, but I'm a bit nervous because I don't want to stress the health service out. When should I be contacting my doctor?
Well, I think the most important thing is to emphasise that we're not closed.
Right.
We're still seeing people with all sorts of other illnesses. And if you feel you're ill for whatever reason, then you should be contacting your doctor. And it may not be the same way that you've been used to getting in touch with your doctor, but we will be phoning back. Initial contacts will usually be by phone. And if we need to see you, then we will make arrangements to see you so that we can look after you. We still want to be looking after all your other health conditions.
No, that's very reassuring. Thank you.
If you have a cough or a fever, we may say, well, actually, if you're well enough to be at home, then you don't need to see us. If you're not well enough to be at home, you need to be going to the hospital. So we wouldn't be asking you to come to the surgery if you've got symptoms that might indicate that you've got COVID.
Right. Yes, I understand. So COVID, dial 119.
That's right.
Get a test. And then, obviously, if you start to feel really ill, dial an ambulance?
Dial an ambulance, yeah.
Okay, but everything else, go and see your doctor. I can confirm that he's still working really hard, albeit more remotely now from his patients. So, well, thank you very much, Mark, for answering those questions. And I'm just going to finish with a few words about keeping healthy spiritually as well as physically. So, how do I ensure that I stay healthy in that spiritual area of my life too? Well, if you're listening to this, it's one step in the right direction, reconnecting with your faith. We can think about perhaps breaking some of those bad habits that we got into during COVID, hunkering down, not getting involved with anything. And we could perhaps try and get a new perspective by building back better in relation to our spiritual lives, just as important as our physical bodies, actually. So I think we've all realised that during this time, we do need more than food and water to keep ourselves fit and well. And connecting with each other in whatever way we can, if it's remotely like this, is a good thing to do. Connecting with God is also something that we could think about too. Prayer is another thing to try, being mindful as well in our daily activities. I don't know if you've come across that acronym WWJD. It means, what would Jesus do? And if you think WWJD in a particular situation, it could help to focus your response in a positive way. The Bible also has some useful and supportive information. Now, Isaiah, and I'm going to read you a small piece, who was a prophet, a poet, and a politician. What great combination of skills to have, and don't we need people like that in office today? Has something useful to say in chapter 58 of his book, verse 11, if you wanted to delve into that further. Just listen and reflect on these words. Let the words sink in and perhaps restore you. He says, "And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places, and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water, whose waters do not fail." Those are comforting words, aren't they, to us? Please share this talk with friends who might need to know something about the clinical side, and also maybe some of the spiritual details too. One positive is that together, by doing the right things, we can break this cycle of infection, and hopefully by supporting each other in every aspect of our lives, body, mind, and spirit, we can build back better. Thank you.